Like that's
Is that how you would go
that's
hit
what,
on
like
someone?
that's how I hit
Yeah.
on whatever you're trying to build, whether it's
I can only hit a certain level of success at a
How to get the perfect tan. What's up, guys? Welcome to the On Track with Annie podcast. I'm excited for today's episode. It's with Josh, founder of Slate Milk. It is a chocolate milk, high protein, delicious flavored drink that raised a ton of money in funding. They were on Shark Tank. They have done such an amazing job with their product and their brand. I personally drink it all the time. And today I want to sit down and talk to one of the co-founders of Slate Milk. He's awesome. I actually found them in a Forbes article and I read all about the brand and the journey, and I was in awe and I was so motivated and just uplifted by the journey of this brand. And I think it's so cool what they're doing. So I really wanted to have him on today, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Hello,
Hey, Josh, what's up?
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Sorry about
I
I'm
love this
constantly late.
selection that you have behind you. This is
Every
great.
iteration we've ever created.
No, this is so cool. So this is your
Yeah,
workout room slash office.
this is workout room slash office slash guest room with like a pull out couch right there. So
There you
this
go.
is, and then also storage, everything behind me. There's just like anything that doesn't fit in the rest of the house gets thrown in here for some reason.
Yeah, I can totally relate. Where are you located?
In Boston.
You're in Boston. Okay. I'm in
Yeah.
Florida and I'm like dressed warmer than anyone,
It
even though it's like
we
75
just
here.
we just came from there. We did our corporate retreat this weekend and I was down there last Tuesday to Sunday and it was like 60 degrees and raining. It was crazy.
Oh, you were here on, yeah, that was like the worst 5 days we
Terrible.
had. Oh, that's
Awful.
so annoying. What'd you end up
I
doing?
know.
Anything fun?
We were able to play a little golf, and then the whole team came in on Thursday night. Friday, we went to like an indoor like go-kart place, which was really fun. And then Saturday, we like hit 70. So we did the beach. Nobody, like a couple of people went in the water, but it was just kind of like hanging out and playing beach games. And so it was just nice. We're all
That's,
a remote
yeah,
company,
it's
so it's just good
chill.
to get people together. What part are you from, or where do you live in?
I'm in between Delray Beach, I'm here right now, and Miami. So I'm
Nice.
have a place in Miami too. So I'm kind of like splitting back and forth. It's
That's awesome.
confusing. It's
I
ridiculous,
get it.
but we're
That's
trying it
awesome.
out.
That's amazing.
Well, welcome to the podcast. So this is
Thanks.
super chill, but I read one of your articles in Forbes. I've drank Slate Milk for a long time and I love
I
it.
love it.
So I was super interested in your journey and how you got started. So that's kind of what this podcast is about. It's kind of like, urging others to go after what they want in life, motivating others. And I thought your story was super. The first thing I kind of wanted to ask you is what you were doing previous to Slate Milk. Like, what was your upbringing? How did you get into this idea of basically your entire life changing?
Man, I mean, I grew up in Greater Boston area, and when I was young, 8 years old, I think technically, I started caddying for my dad and some of his friends that played golf, and so that was kind of my like first lane into entrepreneurship, where you're really hustling every weekend. Just for my dad, it was a little bit different, but then when I kind of graduated on to carrying bags for his friends when he wasn't there, and then kind of starting to get around the caddy circuit at the local course and hit 10, 12, 13 years old, was going every weekend, showing up at 5 a.m. to make sure that I was one of the first people to get a bag. And I thought it was the best lesson that I could ever get in entrepreneurship because I was making as much money as I was willing to hustle for. I liked the fact that I could kind of dictate how much income I was able to make. I kind of had a boss, but I was always working for very successful people. And so from a young age, I was able to talk to people with a variety of experience, learn about how they got to the position they're in. And so it was kind of my first real job interview when I was 16 years old at Best Buy to be just like one of those guys that
Typical.
sells you TVs and cameras. They were like, "All right, do you have any experience?" And I was like, "Oh, actually, I've been selling for 8 years." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, I caddied for the last 8 years, and I think that's the best sales training you can get." And that's how I got that role. So it's been kind of an interesting journey throughout, but I always say it starts back at caddying. Went to Best Buy for a little while, kind of late high school into college. Then when I was a freshman year in college, these two guys had this idea for a caffeinated energy bar. And they first week of school, they did this pitch at this Shark Tank style competition where they pitched their ideas to a group of aspiring entrepreneurs, and you had the ability to go intern or work for them. And these two guys are really smart, and
So fucking cool.
they were sophomores. They were only a year older than me. And I was like, I would love to help you guys out. So we would go back to their dorm room and we'd just cook and create these and freeze and cut these energy bars that had 100 milligrams of caffeine. It was called Coffee Bar. And the idea was that you had Cliff Bars that were super high in sugar, and we wanted to make a better for you version that also had caffeine in it. And so I learned a lot about the food industry then, a lot of mistakes that we made very early on. But did a Kickstarter, so I learned about Kickstarter, and then ended up getting it into some local Whole Foods and Star Markets up here in Boston to learn a little bit about the world of grocery. But after a couple of years of doing that, we were 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, and we had no idea what the hell we were doing. And I really wanted to go learn from people that had done it before. And so when I was a third year at school at Northeastern, I joined a tech company as the fourth employee and was a part of that company. It was called Venture App, pivoted to a company called HQO, and was there for about 3.5 years as part of the founding team, I guess, as an early employee, and really learned a lot. The CEO over there was probably the best fundraiser I've ever been around. Was very,
Wow.
very good at building his network and raising money and kind of creating a vision. And then I ended up getting to hire my own boss as my director of sales, and I learned everything I know now about sales from him. And just the people that I met are still some of my closest friends today. And so between those experiences, plus while you're at Northeastern, you do things called co-ops where you're working full time, 6 months at a time. I was able to do some of those co-ops at State Street Bank and Liberty Mutual to get some of that big company background. So I had a really good blend of big company and small company. And I knew pretty quickly that I liked the world of startups. And by the time I was ready to graduate school, I kind of had that itch to do something on my own. And at that company Venture Up, one of my first clients was Manny, who's my business partner now. And we always talked about how we would start some tech company together someday. And we were joking about how we had very interesting and similar experiences growing up where we loved chocolate milk, but are lactose intolerant. So I had to drink the lactose-free stuff. And that's how Slate was kind of born. So,
Wow, there's something about working with people that are just hungry to make something happen. Like I think a lot of us
mhm,
are like we want to work for the best company and whatever, but sometimes they're already established and they're just like cruising. Like they're just like
yeah.
chill. They're like, "Ah, it's fine." But you got into all of these things like as they were starting and everyone's just hustling, which I think
Mhm.
was a big indicator of your success.
Yeah, I mean the hustle mentality is it's a culture, it's part of it. Some people argue that in certain places it can be somewhat unhealthy. Like while I was in college, I was working, 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week with some of these companies, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. I mean, it's where I learned so much. It's also why I shout out to Northeastern. I think that they're such a great college because they do force people to go to work 6 months, 2 to 3 times while they're there. And that level of experience you're just not going to get in the classroom. So big,
Oh,
big, big proponent of that.
I totally. So going back to these two guys that had this idea, are you technically like an intern for them and they select like which one they want to choose? Is that how it
Yeah.
worked?
Yep. It was like they go meet a bunch of people and like you could be hired as like an intern for that company. And it was just the two of them. So, the three of us kind of did everything together. I had some sales experience kind of for caddying and Best Buy. So I was running around Boston selling the coffee bars into cafes and bike shops and trying to figure out how retailers worked. But a lot of the R&D and stuff we were kind of doing together in their dorm room, but they were really kind of the masters of ceremony behind kind of the day-to-day of the business. And I was just learning by doing as much as I could. So I would say that I learned a little bit about like the world of food science and grocery then, but I was basically a complete newbie going into Slate.
Wow. And it's interesting too when you come up with a great product because it's literally how you market it and who you get it in front of. And I guess back then, like it wasn't social media wasn't as great as it is now with that.
100%.
Now it's like so easy to, well, not easy, but easier to sell. But from then
Yeah.
you're basically going into stores and you're like, here's my product, try it for free. Was that like kind of how you went about that?
Yeah. Like here's a sample, try it out. And then for some of the local like bike shops and stuff too, it'd be like take a case. And if it sells, then you can pay me, but you don't have to pay me ahead of time. And then it was like, we don't have very much cash, and maybe we'll start making people pay us ahead of time, or we'll do like 50% down, 50% later. It was just figuring out how do you get the people to want to try it, and once they try it, will they keep buying it?
Mhm.
And we were just making it on our own in our dorm room for a while, so it was like, all right, now we need a real facility, and so we're able to find a facility that had all the certifications and everything like that to make sure that by the time we're going into places like Whole Foods or wherever, it was a little bit more legit.
Was Whole Foods the biggest retailer?
Kind of, sorta. We didn't really crack into grocery when I was there. Whole Foods back then wasn't Amazon. It wasn't corporatized. Like it was, you could sell into one store. So we
Mhm.
were maybe in like one or two stores. Where Star Market, we were in like 25 of them. So that's all we really kind of cracked into. It was really early stages. And that right around that point where I was like, okay, this is awesome and I'm learning so much, but I'm learning almost exclusively through my own mistakes. I want to go learn from experienced entrepreneurs. The five co-founders of Venture Up and HQO actually had all sold businesses prior. And so I was like, all right, I want to be a part of a team. Nothing against the first two guys. But just for those five guys to go learn from them was really important to me.
So you in college, you were not the party, like, let's go do all these things. You like wanted to make something big happen.
Uh, I mean, I think I was born as a 50-year-old. So,
You have an
my
old
favorite, I
soul.
mean, yeah, old soul. You can't really see it, but in the background, I have Bruce Springsteen up on the wall.
I love it.
Uh, my freshman year was put on a floor with, it was half guys, half girls, and it was people that either played the D1 sports at Northeastern or played sports in high school. So my co-founder and I actually both have shirts that say high school athlete on them because we were good in high school, but we were never good enough to play like D1 in college. Probably him more than me. He was all state in football and everything like that.
Okay.
Um, but that floor became like my family. Like I just got married this past May, and I think
Congratulations.
25, thank you. I think 25 people at the wedding were from that floor. So we just had this
Oh,
big community starting at my freshman year, and our social life was awesome. And to be honest, I got sick a lot my freshman and sophomore year just because I would be working so much throughout the day, but then I wouldn't want to miss out on the social life of being on campus. And I had such a big group of friends, and we all ended up living in like houses next to each other on different floors of the same house. So I was really, really lucky where I was, I think, able to take advantage of both the social side of college while also working. The place that probably suffered the most, to be honest, is my schooling, my grades, where it was important for me to do well and pass.
yeah.
But I am not going to lie that I definitely flexed my schedule in order to make sure that I was prioritizing work and social over some of the grades that I got.
Did you graduate?
I did.
You did.
That
Okay.
was a big debate when I was a second, because Northeastern's 5 years, which is also nice because you get to spread it out a little bit more. So what I would do is I would take a couple of classes at a time. And to Northeastern's credit, I basically told them like I can't do a full workload and for the full 5 years. So they really worked with me to
Wow.
make it so I could only take a couple classes at a time, or I was able to do an independent study with this very successful guy who only taught MBA classes, and I was able to have an independent study with him count as regular class credit for me. And that one-on-one coaching from him was invaluable and still a friend of mine today. So we kind of made the system work the best that I could.
No, you like surrounded yourself with mentors from an early age. And like
Always.
that is like literally the reason why I'm assuming you are where you are now is because of that. It's
100%.
literally it's your environment makes such a big difference. And I think people don't even realize this as much, but even the things that people are telling you, like you're learning information rather than like talking about, I don't know, random things that don't matter. Girls, we
Yeah.
probably still doing that, but you know what I mean? Like more important conversations than just the basic
Uh,
college crap.
yeah. I mean, I loved having both. Like I think I've always been more of a person that like when I meet somebody at a wedding, whatever, and I'm like always curious of like what they do. And I know that's a culture thing in the US where we have some friends from overseas that are like in our conversations, like what you do is not the first thing you typically talk about. But in the US, it's almost always like, what do you do for work? And I always love that because I think it tells me a lot about the person and how they react to that too, because so many people that I meet are like, oh, I'm in finance. And I'm like, all right, well, do you want to be in finance?
The
And it's
way
like,
they
there's nothing
answer
else
that
I was gonna
question.
do. Yeah. And so anyway, I just think that's like an interesting kind of point there. But for me, it's always been everybody around me in my family, whether they admit it or not. Both my parents are kind of entrepreneurs. My dad has always been in the world of sales and marketing, and he's worked for during the dot-com boom. He worked for a tech company that raised millions of dollars and then didn't really amount to be anything, but like he's kind of dabbled in it a little bit. And with bigger companies, he's always kind of always had side businesses. And then my mom's an occupational therapist, and she had a private practice for 18 years, which is fully running her own business, but she would never call herself an entrepreneur, I don't think. I think I was surrounded by that. And then going into college, my three roommates, like one of them is a screenwriter, and like you're very much an entrepreneur when you're a screenwriter. You're trying to make it in LA, you're by yourself, and Northeastern really surround yourselves with people that are, I think, very entrepreneurial minded. And so because I was just constantly around that, to your point, yes, you're having the classic college conversations, but a lot of times when you're out at parties or you're just meeting people randomly in classes, like people are like working or they're starting something or they're
Mhm.
their friend is doing something. So it was a good environment to be around.
It's exactly, and even to this day, that's exactly who you want to be around. It makes such a
Yeah.
difference in your life. So when you came
Yeah.
up with Slate Milk and you tested it and you finally got the finished product and you're like, oh my God, we have it in our hands, the logo, everything is perfect. What's next?
Definitely not perfect. You will, as you can probably see from early Shark Tank reactions. But so Manny and I met because he was one of my first like client slash partners when at that tech company when I was a third or fourth year in school. And we found out 2 years into working together that our moms actually had their first jobs together at the Brigham here in
So
Boston, and they
crazy.
just had different maiden names. So like crazy that we didn't know that. And so when Manny and I started kicking around different tech ideas, and we kind of joked about the chocolate milk thing, I was like, dude, that's great. I was in food. It's hard. I don't really know if I want to do this again. And 2 weeks later, at like midnight, he sent me this PowerPoint presentation of like, this is why we should do this. And I was like, "Oh, the poor guy really wants me to work with him. Fine,
Sold.
I'll do it like nights and weekends, right?" So I was like, I'll help him. And after a couple months of really diving in, I was like, all right, I'm in. So that was October of 2017. From October 2017, we did not hold a can of finished slate in our hands until almost October of 2019. So it was 2 full years
Oh
of
my God.
idea to holding a finished can. It's really, really hard. And all the time people ask, like, why is nobody else doing this? And I'm like, people might be trying, but it's damn hard to crack into the beverage industry, especially when you're not just putting water and sugar in a plastic bottle. This is a shelf stable, high protein, low acid product that uses cocoa. And when you understand the chemistry of everything, which we did not, there's a lot of things that go into making something not only taste good, but be shelf stable for over a year without the cocoa separating from the protein and blah, blah, blah. There's all sorts of things that go into it. So for us, as two kids from Boston that had no real experience, that didn't really, we had worked at our own startup companies, but like we didn't have the big success to put a stamp on, to go to these manufacturers that mainly work with Coke and Pepsi and say, hey, do you want to try our better for you chocolate milk product? Most of them were like pound sand. And so a lot of that year and a half was slowly building stepping stones to convincing this manufacturer to finally work with us. And so some of those stepping stones were um, from concept, we were able to kind of design initial packaging. And then the first sales broker for Shabani, I had randomly met. He became our first investor,
Randomly
and
met.
somebody randomly met. So like through networking, I back in the tech days was invited. I used to be a good golfer before starting a business, which like destroys your golf game. PSA for anybody. And I was invited to play in this like kind of members tournament, and I was a guest. And so when I showed up, that my member didn't show up, so I was alone at this random person's place, and I was like, screw it, I'm here, I'll play. And so one of the guys was like, are you alone? And we started talking. We had breakfast together, and it turns out he was the first sales broker for Chobani. I was in the tech world
Wow.
though. So I was like, this is pretty irrelevant to me, but like super nice guy. And he was like, when you start the next Facebook, you call me, because I was in the tech world.
Oh, so he saw
So
something in you.
I guess, yeah. And
Yeah.
he's still one of the, as Manny likes to say, the grandfather he wished he'd never had. But he's still one of our closest friends and basically family at this point. This is now, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So we kept in touch. And when we had this idea for Better For You Chocolate Milk, he legitimately hung up on me of like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And then we made him go out to dinner with us, and we gave him the whole presentation. And he's like, that's his thing. He only, as long as I've known him, he's only invested in a few brands, and they're always like concept stage because he wants to help them get to the next step, especially when other people are like, there's no way this works. Because, think about it, back in 2017, 2018 into 2019, starting a dairy brand was stupid because everybody was drinking oat milk and almond milk, and
Vegan,
like
right?
dairy's dying and everybody's vegan, and like there's a big pendulum swing away from dairy. But what we saw is that alt milk was like a $2 billion market, and dairy was like over 20 billion. So you have a market that's 10 times the size. Then you look at the world of protein drinks, that's another multi-billion-dollar market. You have the coffee market that's multi-billion dollars. And we're like, all of these companies are going after this tiny little $2 billion market. Like there's such a big opportunity, which Coca-Cola saw in 2014 by creating a joint venture with a company called Fairlife. And if anybody's ever seen Fairlife or Core Power, they're now fully owned by Coca-Cola. A lot of members of their team have said it's the most successful launch Coke's ever had. It's doing billions in sales in 10 years of business. And so Slate, very similarly with ultra filtered milk and blah, 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 like kind of in that same sort of vein. So anyway, I don't even remember how I got down this path, but
No,
Stu
it's
was one of our
interesting. It's interesting
first
because like
ones.
a lot of the times in business, I think when people are gravitating a certain way, you go the opposite. And that's kind of what
Hmm.
you did. Like all these companies are now vegan, they're promoting their oat milk and crap, and you're like, let's go the other direction. And it worked.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's very important in most businesses. If it's too saturated, go the other way.
Yeah, yeah. If there's a market there, right? Because
Right.
there's definitely something to be said of if nobody's done it before, if nobody's thinking about it, is there actually a market? That's always the first thing I challenge people on when they come up with a very niche product that they're pitching us of like, hey, what do you think about this? And why has nobody done it? And it could just be that it's too hard to create, or bigger companies are just too busy doing other stuff. But the fact that Fairlife had some validation out there for us was like, okay, we think there's a big opportunity here.
That's so interesting. No, I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
going on Shark Tank, so now you submitted,
Yes.
you
Okay,
got
yeah.
to go
So
on
yeah,
Shark
so
Tank.
how we
Let's
got
hear
to the
about
thing.
this. I'm curious.
Okay. So meet the Chobani guy, get him involved, and or he was their broker. And then his daughter and his daughter's best friend started a company called Yasso Frozen Greek Yogurt.
Yes.
They sold to Unilever last year.
For
So
how
Amanda and
much?
Drew, a lot of money, not disclosed.
I'm
Good
curious.
try though. Uh, and very, very successful exit. And they're two awesome, awesome founders. They're also all in the greater Boston area. So Amanda and Drew are friends of ours. They actually led our most recent round of funding. They're just awesome people. And so when we were talking to them about the opportunity, they also said like they helped give us some kind of guardrails as we grew. But so that's kind of who this Trabani guy is he not only is the Trabani guy, but he also helped his daughter's best friend really get Yasso off the ground. If you ask the Yasso team, they'll say he was useless, but you know, silent third partner, we'll call him. But anyway, so in February of 2019, we had this base concept and we had this pilot production run done where we could give samples to people. And so we said, does anybody care? Does anybody else want better for you chocolate milk? And so we did a Kickstarter. And so we ended up putting up a Kickstarter. And Manny's initial gut reaction was Kickstarter is for people that can't raise money and it's for like kind of gimmicky products. And I said, well, back at the energy bar, it was a really good way to kind of test the market, get some early adopters. And so we did it full force. We ended up doing over $50,000 in pre-orders and 1,200 backers. We ended up getting picked up on all sorts of news outlets because it's just different. Like chocolate milk for adults was kind of how we positioned it. And it was kind of like a fun thing that people came to. We did a kickoff event in Boston that over 400 people showed up to, and people were asking me like who I knew there, like why I was there. It was awesome. It was so cool. And from the Kickstarter, two things happened. We got two major things happened. One email was from the president of North Atlantic Whole Foods. North Atlantic's kind of like the New England region. And she was like, I'm a vegan, so I'm not going to drink this, but I get pitched the same companies all the time, an almond milk, a popcorn, whatever. I think this is really cool. I'd love to meet you guys. So that's how Whole Foods became our first retailer for Slate later that year. And then the second thing that happened is we got an email from a Gmail account from a casting producer at Shark Tank. And we said, that's bullshit, delete. Got a
Damn.
call from that guy. We're like, wow, this person's really committed to the bit as a scam artist, delete. And we finally answered one of his calls. And he's like, don't hang up on me. Look at my LinkedIn. I swear I am who I say I am. And apparently, through the process, there's 50,000 plus applicants. Some websites say 100,000. Who knows what the actual number is? But they also have a casting team that goes out and looks at places like Kickstarter and other news outlets to see kind of interesting companies. And he said, I think your Kickstarter video was hilarious. My co-founder Manny does a phenomenal job, and him and my college roommate, the screenwriter, helped write our Kickstarter video and direct it and produce it for very inexpensive, but it was a pretty funny video. He goes, I think you guys would be great on Shark Tank. And we said, we have no product, we have no sales, we have nothing. But he goes, well, would you want a deal? And we're like, I mean, every entrepreneur's dream is to get on Shark Tank. So at first we said no. And then we thought about it and he called and he's like, I'll call you in a couple weeks and then you can let me know for real. And we said, screw it. If we ever get an opportunity, it might never not ever come up again. So we're gonna go on the show. Amazing. I can't even tell you, everybody that has the opportunity to do it should absolutely do it, whether you need the money or not. It's just the experience of going out there, being in LA on like a real studio lot, being driven around one of those golf carts, you have your trailer,
So cool.
like just so cool. Like you're a famous person for the week. You see other shows being produced and you're there for a long period of time, and one of the coolest parts of it is I'm under like a million page NDA, so I'm trying to be somewhat vague here. But one of the coolest parts is you're with a lot of the other brands that end up being filmed on the show. And the best way to describe it is it's basically like entrepreneurship summer camp for a week. You're having dinner with these people.
Awesome.
I'm still in touch with a lot of them, catching up when we're in
It's like
different cities and
college.
seeing it. It's literally like college over again, literally.
Yeah.
So much fun. So that was really cool. Being on the show, I'm a pretty extroverted person, Manny and I both. And talking in front of groups of people, I have a lot of anxieties and other things. That really isn't one of them. I don't mind public speaking.
Good.
But when you go on that show, especially where the producer whispers in our ear before we walk out, by the way, don't lock your knees. We had a guy pass out this morning. We're like, what? Like, I don't know if you ever heard of that, like at weddings and things like that. Like, you're supposed to like keep your knees bent because if
I
you
actually
lock
didn't
your
know
legs out
that.
for too long, blood flow. Yeah,
Oh
apparently
God.
it's a thing.
Jesus.
So if you go back and watch the episode, you'll see Manny and I very slightly bouncing as we're like keeping our knees bent.
You're like, don't fall, don't
And
fall.
yeah, literally. So I will say that we had our lab that we were having some initial samples made that we sent out there. What would they drank on the show was not what is out in the market by any means now, especially not what we initially launched with. There was
Mhm.
some improvements that needed to be made. But what I will say is that the reaction, what our game plan going in there was, no matter what they say about our sales, our valuation, whatever, we're always going to point to look how good that product looks and look how good it tastes. Like we know it tastes so freaking good that we're always going to come back to how good the product is. And when they gave them the product that was probably a little warm because it was sitting out on that little tray for a while, and the gut reaction was Mark spitting it out, our entire game plan went out the window. And we're like, you know what? We're just gonna have to stand here and take whatever the feedback is and try to just get out of here with a little bit of dignity. So I think that we did have a lot of really good conversation while we were in there with them. Tough when the game plan goes away that quickly. I hope we stood our ground somewhat. But the other thing that I will recommend to any food and beverage entrepreneur going in there, make sure you bring saltines or something to cleanse their palate in between. That's as much as I can say, but I will
Yeah.
say that they were not necessarily cleansed palate before they tried Slate, which I think unfortunately ruined the initial experience.
Well, you didn't leave and you were like, we're gonna giving this up completely. Like you left and you were
No.
probably more motivated to, okay, we got to fix this. And what's the next plan?
Yeah, going in, we said we don't really care if we get a deal. Like this is just gonna be a cool experience. And whatever. You get in there, you're like, you really want them to like you, and you really want a deal. It's
Yeah.
hard not to. Like, you have all these cameras on you. It's what you grew up as a kid or grew up when you're older watching it. You're like, you really want something to happen. But a shark taking 10 to 50% of your business, if you really look at like even Cubans come out and talked about it, that type of business model for a high growth brand that requires you to raise a lot of capital typically doesn't work. What the model of Shark Tank works really well when it is more of a gimmicky brand, like the Scrub Daddy. They've crushed it
Oh my
because they got on
God.
QVC and there's not a lot of capital that's necessarily required to grow that business.
Hmm.
Where a food and beverage company or a tech company that requires tens of millions of dollars to fundraise, if a shark who has 300 companies in their portfolio owns 20% of your company, they absolutely might be willing to help, but how much help can they really do and to have that much
Yeah.
equity? I think is just a really tough model. So Mark's actually stepping away from the show. I don't know
Oh
if you
wow.
saw that released, but I think part of it is just that he feels like it's not necessarily the right business model for a lot of these companies.
That makes
Um,
sense.
but yeah, but it's still, I think, as Manny and I say, it was great for the brand. It was tough on our egos. It still gets replayed like every 60 days. I have at least once a week people sending me a screenshot. Like one of my friends just had a kid and like in the living room, like it was me and Manny's dumb face on the TV. Like it's always going to be there, but it's a nice reminder of kind of where we came from.
Hey, it humbles you, right? You got to go through
Oh
those things
yeah,
as an entrepreneur. You're like, get slapped in the face and you're like, well, continue on.
100%.
So what were most of your sales coming from after this, after you were like, let's get this out there and let's market it better? What was
Mhm.
kind of like the segue to
So
doing
we
more?
launched so we'd filmed before we even launched. And then when we launched um, into Whole Foods and a chain called Harris Teeter owned by Kroger down in the Carolinas, and then our own website. And that was like end of 2019, beginning of 2020. So we had these grand plans where most beverages are bought in retail stores and e-commerce is typically secondary. remember telling my dad we're going to sell chocolate milk online. He's like, no, you're not. Nobody's going to buy that. And now that the brand has really evolved from better for you chocolate milk into what we say is better protein. So we sell better tasting drinks with better macros, better ingredients, and it's better for the planet. So that's where our brand is kind of formed into. Um, and so for those of you who don't know, they're high protein milkshakes and high protein iced coffees. We think about it as protein for a long time has been marketed as a supplement towards bodybuilding men. Everybody needs protein in their diet, men, women, children, what have you, need more protein. So we want to create real food and beverage, not supplements that have higher protein in them. So as the brand has kind of evolved in that way, we knew we needed to have an e-commerce presence as well. And so when we launched, we did not expect COVID to happen. And when COVID came in end of Q1 of 2020, our first real year of business, a lot of the distributors were only delivering toilet paper and frozen things to a lot of these stores. And Slate was not a top priority to get in there.
Yeah.
So to his credit, Manny and then Manny's brother, who was working as a post production in LA for a marketing company, and then my college roommate who was doing screenwriting in LA, who didn't have much work because of COVID. The two of them ended up working part time, taught themselves Instagram advertising, Facebook advertising. Ron, Manny's brother, knew graphic design already, and they were just kind of part time helpers with us as long as in addition to our first employee, Anna. And the five of us just tried to find a way to sell chocolate milk online during a global pandemic. And we told investors we were going to do $1 million in our first year. And we were like, how the hell are we going to do that? And completely to their credit, between Manny, Ron, Anna, Nick, they found a way. And over 70% of our sales in year one were through Shopify, our own website. And they got it done. They hit the goal. We did over 1 million in our first year,
Wow.
which was awesome. And we've had crazy growth since, now that we had that kind of foundation set, where over the years it's slowly become heavier in retail. E-commerce is still a big part of our business, but one of the fastest growing segments, retail is now more than 50%. Retail is a big portion of our business, most major grocery stores in the US. And our website has continued to grow, but the fastest growing part of our business is really Amazon. It's
Yeah.
incredible what Amazon has become, especially when in the last few months we cracked top 10 for protein drinks on Amazon. The
Hell yeah.
organic search. Yeah, amazing.
That's
Again, nothing to do
awesome.
with me. Manny's brother is the king of all e-commerce, and he's really done a phenomenal job there with the marketing team. And the organic growth that comes from that is just, it's insane. Like I still can't wrap my head around how big Amazon has become for so many companies. Um, and to your point, starting a brand like 10, 15 years ago where social media was maybe less, but you also think about all of the DTC boom of like the Allbirds and the Casper and the Brooklinens and people that really made so much money, at least revenue, on building their brand through their own website and spending on meta ads. That whole playbook has kind of changed. And in this kind of current window we're in, it's very tough to build a DTC brand profitably, which is why so many people are moving towards Amazon, because Amazon just has the supply chain network that can usually make things more efficiently than you can.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think a lot of people, when they think about marketing, is just creating like some social media images and ads and sending it to
Yeah.
influencers to post. And that doesn't really work these days.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I guess it can for some, but for you, it came more from, well, coming more from Amazon and less from like just sending it to influencers or having them post, like you said, bodybuilding men. Um, right? Do you think that
Yeah,
Amazon is,
Amazon is a big engine for it, I would say, for retail especially, but then also just brand building awareness is so important. And so
Mhm.
for the first 2 years, we did just do product seeding everywhere. And it was just product seeding to influencers.
Mm.
And for us, our whole strategy was, hey, if you like it, feel free to post about it. But like if you don't like it, don't. Because having somebody on like a contract early on to us felt so inauthentic, especially because people are so smart nowadays. They know when something's bullshit. So our strategy has always been, if you love it, post about it. And then when that happens, people end up posting more than they would have if they were getting paid. They're integrating it more into their everyday life. And then as we've gotten bigger and we start to work with more macro influencers, the number one most important thing for us working with anybody is they have to love the product. Like we had
Mhm.
somebody who really wanted to be a part of it, but they just really didn't like chocolate. And I'm like, you can't represent a chocolate milk company basically if you don't like chocolate. Like I love you, but like you can't do it. And it's been a mix of outreach, but it was pretty incredible. Is we've had a lot of people come inbound to us. I'm we have the ad posted everywhere, but like Dana White's a great example where he was told by his doctor he was going to die in 10 years or something crazy because he was so unhealthy. He needed to be drinking more protein. A friend of his gave him a slate, started drinking it every day. It was part of, not the sole reason, of his weight loss journey. And he just was an authentic fan of the brand and said, how can I get involved? And so
Wow.
stories like that, Max Crosby from the Las Vegas Raiders also trying to really, a lot of these, football players don't necessarily have the best diet and nutritions because they can kind of eat whatever they want
Right.
and still go play at the highest level. But more and more people are looking into, okay, how do I get my nutrition program going? Max is one of those guys. He signed $100 million deal a few years ago, and he's like, how do I take care of my body? Think what Tom Brady did for longevity and LeBron and those guys, and a
Mhm.
key piece of that is the protein they're getting. So, Max drinks like 6 slates a day now to make sure he has protein at all times. And so when those types of folks become authentically part of your brand and you see Max on ESPN wearing a slate hat, that's not like us paying him
So
to do
cool.
that, right? Like he just feels like he's part of it. And that's how we've tried to build our brand from an at least awareness perspective, is really bringing in people like that want to continue to push it out there.
No, I like it. It's more chill. You're like, if you like it, great. If not, okay. Like it's just
Yeah.
very natural and real. So now what's the next goal? Just continue to grow in certain supermarkets.
Yeah, yeah, keep growing. We're in a lot of the major grocery stores. So you think about
Mm,
like Kroger and Albertsons and Whole Foods and things like that. We are in a bunch of pretty much all of the Targets, but we're only about half of the Walmart. So we got to keep growing both of those channels. And with all of those stores, we only have a few SKUs in each. So there's a lot of room to grow with additional flavors of our coffee, additional flavors of our shakes, a lot of room to grow there. And then there's a still big opportunity in the convenience channel, the food
oh yeah.
service channel. There's all these different channels we can kind of go down. So keep growing the business and all of those different things. But one of the things that we're really excited about is all of our current products have 20 grams of protein with 1 gram of sugar and in 11-ounce cans. And we've had a lot of requests for higher protein SKUs. So a little over a month ago, we launched a 32-gram product with BJ's up here in kind of on the East Coast to break into that club channel. And then starting in March with a bunch of national retailers, we'll be launching the Slate Ultra Protein that has 42 grams of protein in a 15-ounce can. So
That's
somewhat similar to
awesome.
what Core Power has with their 42 Elite and their 26 regular. We'll have a 42, a 30, and a 20 to really offer the different levels of protein, whether it's for three completely different consumers or for the same person that's drinking different ones at different occasions. So really excited about how much
Awesome.
incrementality will come out of those higher protein SKUs.
Yeah, you're just like listening to what people want and then you're kind of trying testing different products, like which one's gonna
Yeah,
hit. That's cool.
exactly.
What
Yeah.
is your day-to-day like now as an entrepreneur?
I don't
I'm
even
sure it's
know.
crazy.
It's every day is completely different. Every single day it's talking to people almost 24 hours. Like I literally have lost my voice. It's talking to teammates, it's talking to our investors, it's talking to potential new investors, it's talking to retailers. It's making sure that, if somebody asked me on our corporate retreat this past weekend, one of our content creators was like, can you sum up your job in one line? I thought it was really interesting. And what I feel like sums it up probably the best is I'm here to make sure everybody else gets paid,
Okay.
where it's making sure the business has cash in the bank, making sure that the products are being produced, that we're collecting our checks, and that, everything else is kind of in order. So, and everybody else is really helping execute on everything throughout the day to day. And we're just herding cats, if you will, Manny and I, and trying to make sure that the business is functioning. So it's been what I love about my job is every day is so dramatically different. I could be solving an operations challenge about a manufacturer in the middle of nowhere in cow country, and I could be sitting with some hotshot guy next at a basketball game trying to convince him to invest us money, right? Like it's
I love
so
that.
different every day, which I love.
Do you have a lot of downtime or not much? Doesn't sound like it.
Not really, but I've definitely gotten better with it. I would say early on, it's a work in progress, but my co-founder and I both are definitely probably workaholics. We work a lot of hours. It's because we love doing what we're doing. But I have been with my wife now for over 8 years. And so since before starting Slate, she's kind of been along with me for the whole ride. So I think that if I didn't have that, it'd be a lot more challenging to have a personal life.
Yeah.
And she's very good at being like, turn it off. We're having dinner for an hour. Like, let's do it. And as time has gone on, I feel like I've gotten better with that. Another just eye-opening thing, and again, for any other entrepreneurs out there, we don't really take vacations, even when like we go away for a day. Like Mandy and I are still talking 18 times that day. So when we got married this May and we went on a honeymoon, it was going to be like the first vacation that we took. I was borderline not looking forward to my own honeymoon because I was going to be away from work because I just loved it that much and I just didn't want to be away. If somebody needed me, whatever. I'll tell you, I was gone for 10 days and I think everybody was happy for it. The
Yeah.
business was completely fine. Manny and I checked in every 3 days for 10 minutes. It gave me peace of mind. It allowed everything to go smoothly. We were able to really enjoy the honeymoon. And so, again, as the business has gotten bigger, I think we've tried to be better about making sure we take time to ourselves.
So your wife is the one telling you don't work so much, like for chill, relax.
Oh, yeah, she's
Good.
literally
You
the
need that.
greatest.
Everyone needs
I
that if they're
know.
trying to grow
They do.
something because your brain just does not shut off. Like you're
Right.
constantly, even on your honeymoon, you're probably still thinking it's running through your head like 70% of the
Always.
time. It's
Yeah.
automatic. So I
Right.
like to ask this question because I think a lot of people think that entrepreneurs have more free time, and it's really not the case. And I think
No,
when people want to start a business, it's important to know that like it's literally 24/7.
it's your life. I mean, it's having a child. And I don't have a child currently, but it's you are if you're the last, you're the final boss, right? Like there is nothing behind you to stop something from happening. First year of business, one of our first big purchase orders, we had cans get mislabeled that we realized at 11 o'clock at night. At 1:30 in the morning, we were pulling trucks off the road to look at every individual can to see if the label, like who else is going to do that? Right. So
No.
like it has to be you.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff happens all the time. And I remember one of my good friends, whose husband is a very, very successful entrepreneur, was like, "Are you sure you're ready for this?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "You're going to get kicked in the teeth a lot, especially in the first couple of years. Are you ready to get back up when that happens?" And I was like, "Screw you! Like, of course I'll be fine." And you don't realize until it happens. You're like, "Holy shit!" And I
Yeah.
give a lot of credit to Manny for that, and I give a lot of credit to single founders because there's no shot I'd be able to do this as a solo founder.
Yeah.
Like everything that Manny and I do, we do together. And if he's having a tough day, I'll pick up his slack and vice versa. This is so hard, and doing it by yourself, I can't. I honestly can't even imagine how people get it done.
They don't. They get burned out after a couple of years and they give it up. It's
Yeah,
like because it's
I'm
impossible.
sure.
It's like what you're saying. It's like there's no way.
Yeah,
There's no way. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I love listening to this story. It's so motivating and I know it'll help others as well. So I appreciate it. And,
appreciate it.
and where can they find you? Tell me where to find all the slate milk and everything like that.
Go to slatemilk.com. You can see all of the delicious flavors and goodness that we have. You can also get on our email and text list for all new arrivals, like those new high protein SKUs. We also have a store locator to go to your local retailer.
I will put it all in the link below.
I love it.
Thank you. All right. I will go ahead
Thank
and
you.
pause it there. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was awesome.